Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning and welcome to the Sunday morning service at the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship in Laguna Beach. My name is Pamela Floodman and I will be serving as your worship associate for today. Our Zoom and audiovisual texts today are Don West Jr., Paul Bogdan, and Dara Skorecki. And we are delighted this morning to welcome Reverend Terry LePage back to UUFLB as our guest minister. On this first Sunday after Labor Day, many Unitarian Universalist congregations start the year by gathering again as a community of faith, a time that is known as ingathering, looking forward with enthusiasm and excitement to the coming year. So this morning, we are celebrating the joy of ingathering, the opportunity for us to be together again in person at the fellowship building and by Zoom for a hybrid service after meeting virtually over the past 2 months for our summer services and discussions. It is a joy to be together again in this sacred space and also to welcome all who are joining us both in person and by Zoom. Every week, I find my heart lifts when I'm able to join together with this community, either here in this building or by Zoom. And when I realize the power of what we can do together, we are so fortunate that we have all of these different ways in which we can join together. Each Sunday, anywhere there is a service held in a Unitarian Universalist congregation, a chalice is lit. The flaming chalice is the symbol of our faith. So if you have joined us this morning by Zoom, I invite you to light a chalice within your home, and I will light the chalice here at UUFLB. Our chalice lighting words today are from Reverend Janet Parsons, who is the minister of the Gloucester Unitarian Universalist Church, apparently the oldest Universalist church here within the United States. The flame of our chalice this morning is a symbol of the warmth and brightness of our connections. The flame lights our way back together again from our summer lives. And it lights our way forward into this time together of promise and of renewal. Throughout the service this morning, if you are here with us in the building, I invite you, if you wish, to come forward and light a candle here in the sanctuary in recognition of whatever you are carrying in your heart as you join us for worship today. At UUFLB, we are a welcoming congregation. Whoever you are, whomever you love, no matter your age or gender, your ancestral or ethnic background, whatever sincere questions you bring with you today, really whatever it is that has brought you here this morning, we welcome you to our community of mutual caring and serious intent to grow as spiritual and ethical beings. Many thanks to everyone at UUFLB who works together each week to create these opportunities for us to come together, to worship together, to be together in community. Our board, our worship committee, everyone who helps prepare each week for our Sunday morning services, especially now that we're here in the building and the work that needs to be done to open up the building on Sunday mornings. And also those who work on the other events during the week, such as our Zoom at noon weekly discussion group. And I do want to say, I mean, clearly there are so many people who come together, work together to make things happen here at UUFLB. There are always more opportunities.
That's Pam, right?
To be done. So please reach out if you're looking for ways to become more involved. And for anyone who's visiting or potentially new to our community, please connect with us after the service if you'd like to be added to our email mailing list so that you can receive advance notice of each service, the beautiful e-blast that Rachel puts together. And news of other events as well. I really do believe that connecting with each other is the way in which we build community, and that's the way in which we support each other as a strong base from which we can go out and make a difference in the world. On the slide that Don will put up for us now is information about upcoming services here at UUFLB. So coming next week on September 18th, Beth Syverson, who is the Director of Music Ministry at the Orange Coast Unitarian Universalist Church, will be joining us. And this service is focused on addiction and recovery and lessons that Beth has learned from her own experiences. So that will be an important service to attend. The following Sunday, September 25th, our own Ross Quinn and Annie Nelson, frequent attendees of our services here at UUFLB, will be leading the service. And Ross has told me the title of the service is "In Case We Forget Who We Are." Perhaps it fits with the theme of "Remember Me" from the gathering music that we had this morning. The following Sunday on October 2nd, we're going to be welcoming back Lawrence Ingalls. It's been several years, I think, since Lawrence has been here to UUFLB to speak with us. Lawrence is a member of the Fullerton congregation and has been a guest speaker and a guest musician. He is a harpist at more than 20 UU congregations. As I said, it's been several years since he's visited us here at UUFLB, so we look forward to this service. And this morning, we are so fortunate to welcome back Reverend Terry LePage to UUFLB for our social justice service for September. Reverend Terry is an ordained minister in the United Church of Christ who loves to inspire people through her preaching. In reading her bio, I was fascinated to see the Reverend Terry previously worked as a research chemist, and many of you know I have a science background as well as my love for this church. Terry has served as a transitional minister in Southern California. She's a member of the Irvine United Congregational Church and currently works for the Deep Adaptation Forum. In 2018, Reverend Terry became active with C.L.U.E, which is the Clergy and Laity United for Economic Justice, C.L.U.E. And through this work, she eagerly works to support low-wage workers, immigrants, and incarcerated people. And the theme that Reverend Terry has chosen for this morning's service is grief, gratitude, and courage, activism in hard times. She notes that we are living through a time of profound losses, medical, social, political, ecological. We want to create the beloved community and to respect the earth. And this is challenging but essential work. Reverend Terry wrote in describing this service that she wants to work to avoid both despair and also to avoid false optimism. So this morning, she's invited us to join her in honoring our losses so that we can root our activism in something substantial, something more reliable than simply counting on success. As Unitarian Universalists, we have 7 principles which we hold as strong values and moral guides as we build religious community together. And the 7 principles can be found in the front of the gray hymnal. They can be found on the UU webpage. I think we'll probably be seeing them on the screen a little later and talking about them throughout this service. But the theme of this morning's service really has led me this week to reflect on our 2nd principle. As a Unitarian Universalist congregation, we affirm and promote justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. I think that many of us are Unitarian Universalists because of our commitment to this principle, to social justice, to activism, and because of our commitment to working together actively to make a difference in our world. And yet working for social justice is a difficult endeavor, sometimes discouraging, even for a group of individuals who deeply share a commitment to our second principle. So continuing in this theme, I would like you to join me for our centering thought this morning. And again, Dawn will bring it up on the slide. Our centering thought this morning is from Janice Marie Johnson, who is a UU educator, activist, and faith leader. And as it comes up to the screen, I'm going to invite all of us to read these words together. And for those of you who've joined us by Zoom, please go ahead and unmute yourself and join us in reading as well. We are often called
to do the difficult,
if not
the seemingly impossible.
And it is
Vital to our spiritual growth
that we not
ignore these challenges.
Again, the words of Janice Marie Johnson. So thank you, Reverend Terry, for joining us this morning. We look forward to exploring with you the possibilities as we support each other in engaging in activism during challenging times. Our opening hymn this morning is number 108 in the gray hymnal, My Life Flows On in Endless Song. Reverend Terry chose this hymn for our service today, and I don't think she probably knew at the time that this is my absolute favorite of all of the hymns in our hymnal. I first heard it years before I ever came to a Unitarian Universalist church, sung by a folk singer in Vermont. And these words speak to my soul. So for those of you who are joining by Zoom, the words will be in the chat. For those of you in the building, you may stay seated or stand if you wish. Please join with our amazing, talented music director, Carol Cole, as she sings this favorite hymn, number 108, My Life Flows On, an Endless Song.
My life flows on in endless song above earth's lamentation. I hear the real, though far off hymn that hails a new creation. Through all the tumult and the strife, I hear the music ringing. It sounds an echo in my soul. How can I keep from singing? What though the tempest round me roars, I know the truth it liveth. What though the darkness round me close, songs in the night it giveth. No storm can shake my inmost calm, while to that rock I'm clinging. Since love prevails in heaven and earth, how can I keep from singing? When tyrants tremble as they hear the bells of freedom ringing, when friends rejoice both far and near, how can I keep from singing? To prison cell and dungeon vile, our thoughts to them are winged. When friends by shame been undefiled, how can I keep from singing?
Thank you, Carol. Let us take a moment now to remind ourselves why we come together as a community. I invite you to read these words together when and if it feels right to you. If you wish and you've joined us by Zoom, please unmute your microphone And then we can all feel the power that we have when we join our voices together. The words of the unison affirmation will be on your screens. So please join me in reading. Love
Love is the spirit of this fellowship,
and
and
service.
service is its law.
This is
This
our
is our great covenant,
to
to
dwell,
dwell together in peace,
to
to
seek,
seek the truth in love,
and to
and
help.
to help one another.
We have come to a time in our service to briefly share important events that may have touched our lives in the past week. We know that our joys, when shared, are magnified, and that in sharing our sorrows, we give the opportunity to provide support and care for each other, support and care that is vital for all of us in community. So during this time of sharing our joys and concerns, we will pause the recording of the service. It is as much a blessing in this community to be able to give as it is to receive. And in our self-governing and self-sustaining community, we recognize it is our responsibility to do both and to do both well. And so as we approach the time for the offering, we invite you to give what you will for the work of this fellowship, for the work that will mean so much to others in the world, for the work that we can do together. Give what you will, for we are a generous people. During this time of offering here in the fellowship, we will be passing a basket, and the information on your screen provides 2 additional ways which you can give, either electronically on the left, and we now have QR codes on our offertory screen, or also by sending a check to the fellowship. Our fellowship does depend on the love and the generous contribution of our members. We're empowered by all of the innumerable gifts that all of us bring, all who join in covenant with us. And all of these gifts, generously given, are needed for this fellowship and for its continued work in the world. I invite you now to join in singing to each other words of sincere gratitude. Again, if you wish, you may stand and turn to each other so that we can sing to each other. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live.
We live. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. You I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live.
We have come now to, in our service, to a time for meditation and reflection. So I invite you, if you wish, to close your eyes, settle comfortably in your chair as you become aware of the present moment and how you are feeling at the present moment. Thinking of perhaps the breeze on your face, feeling the tension in your shoulders relax as you breathe in and out. Become aware of your back against the back of your chair, aware of your hands within your lap, perhaps folded and touching each other or lying quietly on your lap. Become aware of your feet as they ground you to the ground below you. And as you breathe in and breathe out, continue to focus on your head and then your shoulders. Feel the feelings in your back, your hands in your lap, your feet against the ground. And as we breathe in and out, we'll take a few moments of silence and of meditation as we join together in this time of quiet and reflection.
Just getting my, sorry, getting organized here. We've got too many pages. That might be a bad sign. It is so good to be with you here this morning. They told me, well, we'll be on Zoom, and I'm like, darn. And then they said, oh, I think we're going to be able to meet in person. Yes, here we are. And those of you who are at home or around the nation, hi to you too. It still feels like a party though, even when I'm in a room, you know, with other people who aren't my family. It's pretty nice. So it's been a long couple of years since COVID hit us and brought us some things that we really don't enjoy. Fear, loss of life, loss of health, severe isolation. Also, during that time, we became more awake to the murders of people of color at the hands of government. We've had new and more powerful voter suppression, a deadly insurrection at our nation's capital, and most recently, the overturning of a bunch of rights, including abortion rights. And on top of this, every climate report that comes out says faster than expected, hotter than expected. How'd you like the weather the last week or 10 days? Never had anything like it in the almost 30 years I've lived in California. And you know what? It looks pretty mild compared to a lot of places around the globe. So I would like to honor every justice-seeking person, every compassion-seeking person, every person who wants to make the world a better place, who is weary and discouraged, who is grieving, who is fearful for the future, or all of the above. I don't think we have to pretend that everything is okay. It's not. We're in a period of loss. In white American culture, we don't have a lot of tools and skills for dealing with loss because we're supposed to be always more, better, faster, bootstrapping ourselves up into greater achievement and effectiveness, manifesting abundance, if that's your flavor of describing it. And you know, all that stuff works pretty well when times are good, if you have a certain level of privilege, but it's not sustainable. It never was, nor is it just. Even us progressives, we think that things should be progressing, right? Getting better. And it's hard, it's really hard to admit that important measures of justice and compassion and earth care are not progressing. We're losing ground. So it's not just activists that are hurting these days. A lot of people, since COVID started, have been impacted mentally, emotionally, spiritually. I've had so many phone calls with people who've been freaking out in one way. Excuse me, cough drop. People who've been freaking out in one way or another and blaming themselves. Each time I had one of these conversations, I would point out, look what you've been through recently. No wonder you're having problems that you never had before. And each time the person would be surprised and comforted by me pointing out what seems pretty obvious. It never occurred to them that they were having a pretty normal response to very hard times. Our culture is so individualistic that we get to be responsible for propping ourselves up when the world around us is collapsing. We're supposed to be manufacturing our own success and health and opportunity no matter what. So if you aren't on your A game, this culture tells you that you are the failure. And then you get to feel guilt and shame on top of everything else. I want to go back to some basics here. I love your Unitarian Universalist principles. And here's principle number 1. The inherent worth and dignity of every person. Not just healthy people, not just successful people. Also, the inherent worth and dignity of people who cannot figure out how to hold it together. People who are overwhelmed and don't know what to do. Each of us has that inherent worth and dignity, no matter how we're feeling, no matter what we are or aren't able to do. So if you're feeling broken or bereft or just stuck, know that your worth remains always unbreakable. And let other people know that truth too, because guilt and shame are not helping all the other burdens that people are carrying. Acceptance and affirmation are sometimes the best medicine that we can offer to each other and to ourselves. Now, one of the best ways to affirm a person's worth is to be a good listener. Now, I want to point out to you something that may seem obvious. but it seems to escape a lot of people. Being a good listener means doing very little talking. As a pastor, I get to do informal pastoral care for many of my friends. And mostly that means I listen. They book an appointment, I'm busy. They get an hour with me and they talk, and I listen. And they talk some more, and I listen. And they talk some more, and I listen. And only when they've wound down, when they've gotten it all out, do I offer any reflection. I try to save any advice until the very end, when I ask them first whether they want it. This is not something that comes natural to me, this listening. It is a learned skill, and everyone can learn it. So I want you to realize how healing it can be. Listening means receiving the other person's heart, holding space for them fearlessly, with just occasional gentle affirmations like, "That sounds really hard." It's pretty all-purpose these days, works almost every time. "That sounds really hard." When we offer diagnoses and solutions without listening well first, it can sound like we just want to be done with the other person's pain. UU principle number 3, I'm just catching them as I can. Acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations. Acceptance of someone's pain and brokenness without rushing to fix them requires our spiritual growth. Sitting with the pain, it's not easy. But there is no easy fix for someone who's in deep grief or fear over the state of our democracy, the state of our planet. Instead of trying to convince them that things aren't that bad, or telling them what to do to fix their feelings, we can just hear their pain, be there and listen. This could be frightening sometimes. The easy path is to avoid or dismiss someone who's having deeply troubled emotions. Grief and fear are not fun to hear about, but they're even less fun to live through alone. It really helps to have a listener when you're feeling like that. It really helps not to try to belong to the club of required cheerfulness. So I've been listened to, and that's one of the reasons I can listen well. Back in 2019, I got a reality check on the state of the climate, the likely pace and magnitude of climate-related disasters. And after that, I did a lot of grieving. I learned a few things. I learned that I could find relief from anger, from anxiety, by getting in touch with my grief. This is something that traditional cultures know, and most of us have forgotten. So I began whispering to the ecological activists I knew, could you use a space for grieving? Well, I discovered that several of them were already in therapy for their climate anxiety. So that was a yes. So a colleague and I put together a workshop at my church, Irvine United Congregational. We had about a dozen people there, and we called it Grief, Gratitude, and Courage. We gathered in a circle with a candle, objects from nature, making a little altar in the center. We spoke to each other about our grief for the non-human world that we're losing. We listened well. We did ritual, naming and releasing things we were grieving. We didn't try to fix or strategize. We just listened. Loss can make you see what remains with new eyes. I realize what treasures are all around us. And I've gotten in touch with gratitude as a really powerful tool to release the grief, to honor the grief. Knowing what the future can bring for our planet, every bird who makes it to my garden, every bee is a chance for celebration, for savoring. Our grief is as deep as our love, and love calls forth gratitude if we're paying attention. So in the workshop, we spent a bit of time talking about what we're grateful for in spite of loss, or even because of it. And last, we talked about courage. Where does courage come in? Well, loss remakes us. The old ways we spent our time, how we made meaning of our lives, may no longer make sense anymore. Our identity can even change. Grief destroys old assumptions, old certainties. We have to find new ways to be in the world without the things we love. Our activism might even not make sense anymore. So we need courage to find new meaning, a new identity, new ways to be and do in the face of loss. Or we might just need the courage to slow down, to know that we need time to figure out how to be in the world after a loss. So, pondering deeply before deciding what action to take, that is a very countercultural move. Frantic busyness is the way a lot of activists function, right? On to the next rally. What can we do next? What can we do next? I recall a t-shirt my friend Peter used to wear in seminary. It said, "Jesus is coming, look busy." We won't find wisdom for hard times in frantic busyness, running from one project to the next. Philosopher and activist Bayo Akomolafe likes to say, "The times are urgent. We must slow down." Old solutions are failing us. Courage can mean admitting we don't yet know a new way forward. A couple weeks after that grief, gratitude, and courage workshop, COVID hit. I rapidly learned more about Zoom than I ever wanted to. So I brought grief, gratitude, and courage online. That turned out to work surprisingly well. When George Floyd was murdered, a friend and I created a workshop to grieve racial injustice and violence. And that was greatly appreciated by my activist friends. Eventually, I found my niche with an online group called the Deep Adaptation Forum. The Deep Adaptation Forum exists to enable and embody loving responses to our predicament. What predicament? Well, societal and ecological decline, collapse perhaps. Sad to say, I'm expecting worse to come. And I want to hold on to my values no matter what happens. I want to be with others facing hard times with all the love and wisdom that we can muster. So what I do in the Deep Adaptation Forum these days is help host and administer groups that look a lot like my grief, gratitude, and courage. In time zones around the globe, we facilitators and hosts within the Deep Adaptation Forum make online spaces where it's safe to be in deep grief or fear about the state of the planet, the state of political and economic systems. And over, I hear, "Oh, I've needed this. This is the first time someone will listen to what I have to say and understand me. I feel so much better." So I've learned that the power of listening can't be overstated. And I have a little secret about how I get people to open up in my groups. I talk about my own grief. I usually start crying, and calmly, through my tears, I tell them, crying is okay here. This business of things falling apart is new to most of us. We come from privilege. But for many people around the world, things have always been falling apart. So when I'm tempted to say this is too hard, I think of activists throughout history and around the globe who are indigenous people, people of color, people in deep poverty, who made or make their lives in spite of deep suffering, who put their lives on the line for speaking up, who have lived through the collapse of their homes and their cultures and survived and rebuilt. I'm learning that what matters is not winning or an easy life. What matters is showing up, being with each other, doing the right thing, whatever the result. Loving when we're provoked to fear or hate, in response to fear or hate. I see courage in the forum every day when people live with a very dark view of our future and still find meaningful ways to love and serve and be grateful. Many of us are still activists, and we choose our efforts carefully. We also find ways to respect the web of life. UU principle number 7, right? The ways I see are planting a garden or a food forest. Has anybody heard of permaculture? It's a thing. Caring for wild places, learning how to live more with less so that you don't have to be part of an unjust system or you have money to apply to help build justice. Sometimes living off the grid, that's an adventure. Teaching children to love and respect the non-human world. Building community with an eye for disaster preparedness. These are some of the things that people in the forum are doing when they're not listening to one another. And as I'm sure that many of you have experienced, spending time with the non-human world is restorative. Spending time with people who are also seeking compassion and justice is restorative. In the forum, we prioritize relationships. We take time for crying and for celebrating. We have check-ins at almost all of our gatherings. And so we comfort each other through struggles, whatever they are. And because we're from around the globe, we get to experience some of those disasters closer to hand than we might otherwise. I suspect that some of us in the forum with privilege have had a bit of a savior complex in the past. So is it failure to admit that some things are not in our power to save? And that runs against the grain, that runs against all my training. But it might be proper humility. And if we admit that some things are not in our power to save, then what do? Well, UU principle number 4, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. That means I don't get to tell you what to do if the outcome is not assured. How to be of service in hard times. But I know a few things that I want to do, and I'll share them with you. I want to prevent getting burned out. And I think burnout is another word for despair. When what you've been doing isn't working and you just can't deal with it anymore. I'll need to use all the spiritual medicine I have to avoid burnout. I'll need to lose my savior complex for sure. I'll need to get used to grieving and not getting what I hope and not getting crushed by that, accepting my limits. And the best way I've found to do that is to go deep into the web of being, UU number 7, and know myself an unshakable part of that web, seen and unseen, and to know that you are too. And it's paradoxical that grieving really is a good antidote to burnout. And of course, so is listening and being listened to. So here's another thing I want to do in my activism in these hard times. I want to respect young people. I want to listen to them. If I hear one more person say, it's up to our children to save the planet because we didn't do it. That's an unacceptable burden to place on young people. It's up to us to expect nothing from younger people that we are not willing to do ourselves. I also want to attend to relationships because I've noticed that the best activists spend time building and nurturing relationships, as much time as the actual work. And the best activists are friends with other activists. We take care of each other. This is how people have always survived hard times. And finally, in these hard times, I want to keep practicing grief, gratitude, and courage. Not the usual things on an activist short list, but moving forward, maybe they should be. Grief, gratitude, and courage are tools that we need for activism in hard times. So in that spirit, let me end with abundant gratitude for being welcomed and given a chance to speak here today. Thank you for inviting me to share my passions with you. I hope I haven't put a load on you that feels heavy. I hope I've named a truth for you that maybe didn't get named other places. I thank you for being community through this hard time. You are not large in numbers, but I feel your spirit. I feel its power. You make a difference. I'm grateful that you've held on through virtual worship, and I don't know the current situation you are with the pastor, but you're still here, a spiritual home for free thinkers and activists and people who want to build a better world, who come together to support one another. I don't know what the future holds, but I trust it's better when we join together in community, in grief and gratitude and courage, cheering one another on, comforting one another, enabling and embodying loving responses to whatever we face. Thank you, UU Laguna Beach. I am glad to be among you. I am glad we are working together. I wish the UU principles were officially mine. They're not, but they are unofficially mine because they are the right way to live no matter what happens. Amen. Blessed be.
Thank you. Thank you, Reverend Terry. Much for us to think about, much for us to continue to do in working together and working with all of our communities. So now I invite you to join in our closing hymn this morning, number 1015. And the hymn is entitled, I Know I Can, but I think of it as I Know I Can Go On. I hope that you will join us. The words will be in the chat. And for those of you who are in the building, please join Carol by singing number 1015, I Know I Can Go On.
Storms when sorrow heals my soul and burdens make me strong. Though troubles wait at every turn, I know I can't go on. My sister in my heart, my brother in my song. Though troubles wait at every turn, I know I can't go on. And though the journey is long and birth's destination is near, the troubles wait at every turn, I know I can't go on. So brothers, take my hand, and sisters, sing my song. When hope awaits at every turn, I know I can repeat, I know I can, one more, I can go on.
Now is the time for us to extinguish the chalice here at UUFLB and within our homes. Our chalice extinguishing words today are from Reverend Amy Zucker Morgenstern, parish minister of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Palo Alto. When we take fire from our chalice, it does not become less, it becomes more. And so we extinguish our chalice, but we take its light and warmth with us, multiplying their power by all of our lives and sharing it with the world.
Mustn't touch. Go forth from this place knowing your value, knowing you are part of the beloved community that exists even within the struggle, knowing that the natural world, the non-human world, embraces you and loves you and asks you to love it back. Go forth in peace, finding gratitude, listening, loving, and serving.